Allow me to reintroduce myself. My name is...
Hey, y'all know I'm usually fun and gags and giggles. Especially for my Tea with Dr. T, I like to make it lighthearted and a learning experience. But today we're going to have to talk about something that's a little bit deep. And this is a tribute to Malcolm Jamal Warner, also known as Theo on The Cosby Show. This is what I was going to do my next topic on anyway, but it's just more timely since we are all collectively grieving his loss. I want to talk to you today about making sure that you and your family are prepared should something happen to you. Malcolm Jamal Warner was 54 and on vacation with his 8-year-old daughter and his wife in Costa Rica. What is supposed to be a wonderful, relaxing, refreshing time became, unfortunately, a time of tragedy and loss. And I'm going to tell you, I'm going to just be completely transparent. I struggle with death. Like this and roaches and mosquitoes and rats are the things that when I get to wherever I got to go after this, I'm going to be like, what was the point? Because, baby, in my opinion, people could live forever. What's wrong with that? But my granny told me something. She said, if we didn't have death, we wouldn't appreciate life. Baby, she said, if childbirth wasn't painful, we wouldn't cherish our children. She said, because anything we get easy, we are not going to value. Come on, granny. Anything that comes easy, we're not going to value. And many people know this, but I was diagnosed with an aneurysm in 2022. And I just boo-hoo crying the next year. God, why? Why I gotta have an aneurysm? Haven't I been through enough? And the one specific thing I said to God was, why would I have to have an aneurysm? Because now I gotta live each day like I might die. And God said, that's how you were supposed to live anyway. Because each day you might die. And Malcolm Jamal Warner's death is a cautionary tale to us. That everybody's end of life doesn't look like my granny's at 101 with family around you, getting 30 days to say goodbye, giving your loved ones 30 days to prepare their hearts and minds for your transition, telling your family that she was walking up the King's Highway. She was literally saying, pick me up, like take me up out of here. Everybody doesn't get that. We all have experienced that split-second loss at a time when we didn't see it coming. So why do we still walk around like we are invincible? Like it's not going to happen to us. Like it couldn't possibly be us. And I'm talking to the choir. I got into a traumatic, tragic car accident at 23 years old that most doctors, most of the people that saw the car, the first responders, they all said I shouldn't have made it. So why did it take me until just maybe 2 years ago for me to do my own will, even though I was telling other people to do their will? You know why? Because none of us wants to face our own mortality. None of us wants to actually sit in the thought that I might die. That is so painful for us to say, so painful for us to think about. But guess what? If we don't make preparations for what happens when we pass, we leave a mess for those that we love. My Aunt Della had colon cancer. She beat it the first time. And right after she beat it, Chadwick Boseman died of colon cancer. And my Aunt Della just cried and cried and cried. She said, I don't understand why God would spare me from colon cancer and take Chadwick Boseman. I would have preferred to die of colon cancer and let Chadwick Boseman live. She said, and I'm going to get it again. Cancer's going to come back. And the next time it comes back, I won't beat it. And I used to say, Auntie Della, don't say that. You're going to beat it again, even if it does come back. And let me tell you something. Cancer came back and she didn't beat it the second time. And you know what she did? She wrote her obituary. She planned her funeral. She picked out her colors. Her daughter, all she had to do was execute my auntie's wishes. And the family fell in line because we knew that was what she wanted. And I thought to myself, this is so beautiful. As difficult as it might have been, because she only had one daughter that she loved with her whole heart. I know she didn't want to leave my cousin, but she knew what better gift to give. She had burial insurance, she had life insurance, she had everything lined up. That's the way she showed her love after she passed. And that taught me a big lesson. We have to do hard things. We have to face hard things. It is part of life. I know we don't want to think about it. I know we don't want to talk about it, but we are doing our loved ones a disservice if we don't plan, if we don't talk about it, if we don't write out our final wishes, if we don't decide who gets what. We are leaving our loved ones in a time of grief to have to make huge decisions. I want you to think about Malcolm Jamal Warner's wife. I want you to think about what she's going through. An 8-year-old who watched her father drown, now we know. A husband gone too early. They had just started living their life, just had their baby. I mean, 8-year-old, that's nothing. And now she has to try to figure out how to live without him. Compound onto that, having to financially figure out where things are, how to pay the mortgage, how to pay the gas, the electric. Compound on there, I don't know where the insurance papers were or if they even had insurance. Compound on there the growing and rising cost of a funeral. When my granny died, her funeral was $11,000. That is not chump change. That's not something that most of us just have laying around in the safe or laying around in the bank. If you do, that's wonderful. But most of us do not. How do we leave a legacy for our loved one that does not financially and emotionally cripple them when they are already dealing with grief? Grief is like being drunk. You can't think straight. You can't make good decisions. And then you're forced to look at a life that maybe you don't even know how to get from plan A to plan B. I know people recently who lost their spouse and didn't even know how to pay a bill because they never had to pay a bill. They never had to look at the mortgage amount. They never had to figure it out. I talked to somebody yesterday who might have to go get a job. And she's in retirement age, but she had a husband who took care of her entire adult life. So sitting down, having these conversations about where things are, where the important documents are, having something like a spreadsheet set up so that if somebody does have to take over the bills, they know exactly who to pay and when. These are little things that can take an hour, 2 hours to do, but they could save a lifetime of heartache and headache for our loved ones. I'm going to do better. I'm going to do better. I made my will, but I still need to do a living will. I still need to do a power of attorney. There are still documents outstanding that I do not have, and that's living with the aneurysm. Everybody who has a diagnosed aneurysm, if it ruptured, you have a 50-50 chance of making it. And there are a lot of people walking around with aneurysms that don't know it. I can't even get additional life insurance with the diagnosis of an aneurysm. That's how serious it is. So if you have a condition like congestive heart failure, diabetes, kidney failure, end-stage renal failure, cancer, any of those, I mean, it shouldn't take a diagnosis, but especially those of us walking around with a diagnosis that has a high mortality rate, we need to be the first people creating wills, creating power of attorneys, creating living wills. Now, I've shared this before. I did a little thing called What's Love Got to Do with It? Everything. End of life planning. But I'm going to go over again, just high level, what you need to do. Number one, get at me for a will. I have never gone up in my will prices. They've been $100 since 2008. I'm up there with Sam's Club and Costco's with their food prices. Okay? Until the Lord tells me to increase those prices, I will continue to do wills for $100. I didn't used to talk about wills. I did them, but I didn't talk about them. People would ask me. Until I was doing a divorce for a woman who came to Columbus, Ohio from Colorado to escape a domestic violence situation. She had a 14-year-old daughter. As we were preparing her paperwork to file for her divorce, she died unexpectedly. After she died, her 14-year-old daughter called me, and this will literally haunt me for the rest of my life. And she said, please tell me I don't have to go back to that man. That man was her biological father. I couldn't tell her that she wouldn't have to go back to him, because she did have to go back to him. You know why? Because her mother did not have a will. Had her mother had a will, she could have named a guardian someone safe. But because she didn't have a will, her daughter had to go back to the very man that had physically assaulted her mother. Now, that's not to say he was going to physically assault her. We don't know. But obviously, she didn't feel safe going back there, or she never would have called me. That's when I started advocating for wills. Because again, nobody knows what her wishes were after she died. But I bet she would not have wanted her daughter to go back to that man. And there was nothing I could do about it. Your will is not for you. It lays out, if you have young children, who do you want to appoint to the guardian? I always recommend couples, when you are married, that you appoint each other guardian, just so that's clear, and then have a backup guardian in the unimaginable situation where both parents die at the same time. You need to have a guardian and a backup guardian. You need to have a conversation with your guardian about the fact that you would like them to raise your children. If something would have happened to me when my children were young, I had my best friend, Danette Sharpley, as my guardian. She spoke to her husband about it. They agreed that they would take my children if something happened to me. This is not something light that guardians are taking over. I know people who are raising their best friend's children because that was their wishes and their will. If you have young children, you should also make sure that you have an insurance policy where that child is the beneficiary. That way, the financial, I want to say burden, but that's not the right word, but you know, the financial burden of raising that child, you are helping the guardian out with that, okay? The next thing you want to think about is, who is the executor of your estate? The executor of your estate is the person who will make decisions on your behalf as if they were you. A lot of times people will say, oh, my oldest child will be my executor. And I say, will they make the decisions the way that you would make the decision? If not, they should not be the executor. It has to be somebody with your heart that would do what you would do. That's not to take away from any of the other children. It's just to say you want to nominate your executor, somebody who would do what you would do in a situation. So there are things that you have detailed in your will, but there's always something that comes up, right? You have all this stuff in the will, but then the kids say, who's going to take mom's plants? She loved her plants. Somebody needs to take them that would take care of them. The kids go back and forth. Well, I don't know. I move around a lot. I might not want to take them. The executor is the one who will make the decision that the mom would have made. Okay, it's very important that you spend time thinking about who your executor will be. Spouses usually have their the other spouse. The wife has the husband has the wife, husband has the husband, wife has the wife. Whoever it is, they usually have their spouse as their executor. If you're single, you need to really sit down and think about who will be your executor. I've seen siblings as the executor. I've seen parents as the executor. I've seen children as the executor. There's also always a case where you don't have family that you can depend on like that, so you nominate a friend as an executor or a colleague. I've never personally done a will with a lawyer as an executor, but I know that that does happen as well. Okay, it needs to be somebody with you have a long-standing relationship with, that knows you well, again, that you feel like would make the decisions that you would make. You want to talk to your executor before you nominate them, and you also want to have a backup executor. should that person say that they're not capable of doing it at the time of your demise. Okay? So far we have a guardian. If we have minor children, that's children 18 or younger, or if you have a child that's incapacitated for any reason, like autistic or anything like that, where you're the primary caregiver, you want to also nominate a guardian for them. We have executor, the person who's going to make decisions on your behalf for you. And then the other thing in the will you want to do is you want to detail who you are leaving your personal property to. So this is cars. Cars should be identified by VIN number as well as make and model. Furs, diamonds, jewelry, record collections, your pet. I mean, anything that you really want to be concerned about how it's taken care of after you leave here, you want to put that in the will. Okay? Your house, your property should be left in the will. I do recommend getting an insurance policy on your mortgage, so should something happen to you, your property will be paid off. Okay? That way your children aren't scrounging to try to figure out how to make the monthly payments if something happens to you. That's it for a will. Okay, I have a clause that I've been putting in recently. What do you want done with your social media? That's a big thing. Do you want your page memorialized? Do you want it shut down? Do you want it left active? Okay, these are all things that we have to think about in 2025. The other thing you want to think about is passwords. Okay, do you want to leave your password so somebody can go onto your computer and just download, look, read, see what was going on? That's something that you will want to include in your will as well. Now, people often ask me, where does life insurance information go? Does it go in the will? Where does what I want at my funeral go? Does that go in the will? The answer is no. Those things are not contained in a will. You will want to contact a funeral home and work with them directly on your final wishes. All the funeral homes in Columbus, pretty much, that are Black-owned, I can only speak on the Black-owned funeral homes. They have pre-packages where you can pay for your final arrangements as well as give details. There's a booklet that you fill out, give details, what flowers you want, what do you want to be wearing, what casket do you want, all of those things. Is it difficult? Yes. I made an appointment to do it and I canceled the appointment, okay, because I don't want to go there, but it is necessary, and I'm going to push myself to do it this year. Okay, I want a pine box with the flag of Ghana on it, like, you know, something simple. I mean, Martin Luther King had that. He had a simple pine box because he wanted the money to go to his family. So, you know, I don't want a lot of money spent on that at all. But I do want to have a joyous celebration, upbeat celebration. Those are the things that you need to leave, the kind of details. What songs you want played, right? Who do you want singing? Those are all things that you can write down so that your family knows what you want. That is done at the funeral home. And then the other thing is you want to put in all of the other like little, let's say, details you want to put in that aren't in the will. You want to create a folder, and my folder is labeled important docs. So that's all of my deeds, the titles to the car, the insurance policies, the birth certificates, the social security cards, everything that's important. Should something happen to you, you want to put all of that stuff together. Okay. Your life insurance policies, it's so important that you have these somewhere, and one person at least knows where that information is. Whether it's your oldest child, your youngest child, your sister, your brother, your parents, or I always recommend that you give all of this stuff to the executor. Okay? Just like you have a folder with important documents, I would recommend that you give a will, your power of attorney, I mean, anything that you would need, that you make copies of that and you give that folder to your executor. Now, let's talk a little bit about the difference between a will and a power of attorney, because I get this question a lot. Your will is you're giving somebody the information that you want done when you pass. The power of attorney is if you're incapacitated and you need somebody to be able to act on your behalf. So you could do a power of attorney for something as simple as, I'm going to Ghana in December, right? And I might want somebody to be able to pay my mortgage while I'm gone. I could do a power of attorney for that. Or I want somebody to go to the bank, get the money out, and wire it to me. I could do a power of attorney for that. Okay? Power of attorney is, there's different kinds of power of attorney, but the most commonly used one is the financial power of attorney. Okay, I was my grandmother's power of attorney. I could pay her bills. I could go get money out the bank for her. I could make decisions on her behalf when she was incapacitated. Okay, the medical power of attorney is also important. The medical power of attorney is who will make decisions, medical decisions on your behalf if you are incapacitated. So those are two different documents. Okay, financial power of attorney, medical power of attorney. Neither of these survive death. So once you die, you no longer have a power of attorney. Okay? Your power of attorney is only for when you are alive, yet you are incapacitated and unable to make decisions. Again, you should nominate a power of attorney who will be able to make decisions on your behalf and who has your best interest. I have had situations where somebody made somebody their power of attorney, stuff started going left, money started coming up missing. It's very difficult to get somebody's power of attorney revoked because you have to prove all of those things. So be very, very careful who you nominate as your power of attorney. Okay, both medical and financial. Another great tool is the transfer on death tool. You can go to the bank and you can fill out a transfer on death paperwork. And that way, when you die, somebody is able to access your money in the bank. They don't have to go to probate court. There's no freeze or hold put on your account. The money is able to transfer immediately. There's also a transfer on death for your deed for your house. So that way, when you die, the deed transfers automatically. Again, you don't have to wait till probate. You don't have to wait to get permission from the court to take possession of the house. Okay? And then transfer on deed also with the BMV for your vehicles. I highly recommend the transfer on death, again, because it gives people access to your things immediately, instead of them having to wait until the will is, read and or everything goes through probate. I get a lot of questions about trust. A lot. It's on my bucket list this year to learn how to do a trust, because honestly, when I was in law school, we were not taught trust as things that would apply to regular schmegular degular people, right? We were taught trust like things that Lex Wexner would do. He would create a trust for his kids, right? Not Tanika Price. So I didn't even learn how to do a trust because I knew that my audience, my clients would be people like me. And so I didn't learn how to do a trust. So I refer out to everybody who contacts me about doing a trust. But I had somebody challenge me to learn how to do a trust. And so that is something that I'm going to work on this year, God willing. Not much I can say about trust other than it sort of creates an entire entity, puts everything in an entity. It can't be touched. And allegedly it bypasses probate. But I do know people whose family members had trust, and because there was something that was contested, they did have to go to probate. And that's a caveat that I want to discuss. If any of these documents are contested, then you will have to go to probate, and a judge will have to make the decision. That's why I keep emphasizing sit everybody down and talk to them, okay? Because the one child that's not in the will is going to be the one that's going to contest the will, right? Or if you have dementia or Alzheimer's and there's a second will created when you are in diminished mental capacity, that's a legal term for it, that could also be contested, right? Because anybody could take mama's hand and make it look like she signed a new will, giving me everything. Make sure, siblings, even if you don't get along, that you just have a discussion. What are we going to do? Are we going to get together? Are we going to agree? Or it's going to be on the parent to write everything down to the nail so that the siblings aren't beefing and arguing about it. Okay, if you know you have children that don't get along, the last thing you want to do is leave it up to them to decide what kind of funeral. I literally know a family that did not have a funeral. because they could not come together to plan the funeral for their mother. Can you imagine? So none of us want to be in that situation. So we want to make it as easy as possible for our loved ones by having these conversations. The last thing I want to discuss is living will. The living will is another medical document that I recommend people get. Your living will tells what are your final wishes if something happens to you and you become incapacitated. So your power of attorney will be making decisions for you, but your living will spells out what you are asking. Okay? So, for instance, my living will says that I could be resuscitated and remain on, in a vegetative state or, with machines keeping me alive for 2 weeks. I figured out to give everybody time to come, say their goodbye, say their final wishes, and then take me off. I don't want to be in a long period of time in that state. That is something that families really, really struggle with. And it happened with us, with my grandma. She wasn't in a vegetative state, but people struggle with whether or not to let her go when the doctors were saying there was no hope for her recovering. And some people wanted to fight, believing that she would have a miraculous recovery, which was possible because God and Granny could have did anything. I just believed that it was time for her to go get her reward, that she had done everything she needed to do. She had left it all on the table. She loved us beyond measure. She provided for us beyond measure. She was there for us beyond measure. This woman, when she was 100 years old, went to visit her mother's grave, cleaned it off. My uncle and mom and aunt cleaned it off. But she had that much honor in her that she went all the way to Cleveland to visit her mother's grave at 100 years old. And it took me a year to go see Granny in the grave. And I'm only 50. She left an incredible legacy, right? But these are the kind of things that I was like, she did everything she came to do, baby. She did it. And now it's time for her to go get her rest and reward. So when God gives you the peace that surpasseth all understanding, and he allows you to let your relative go in dignity, that's an honor. That's something only God could do. But we didn't know what Granny would want. I personally had never had that conversation with her because I didn't have the courage to have that conversation with her. And I regretted not having a conversation with her. I didn't know if she would want to be on machines. I didn't know if she would just want to go. Because we never had that conversation. I couldn't even think about Granny dying without bawling, crying. So these are the conversations that you want to have, because this kind of dissension, it does tear families apart. It does turn brothers against brothers and sisters against sisters. And we could just save all of that by loving our family enough to know death is certain. I'm sorry. I wish it wasn't, but it's certain. The question is, what are we going to do to make sure that the people that we love are prepared and they have what they need? I hope you enjoyed this episode of The Tea with Dr. T. I hope you go back and talk to your relatives, your friends, your family. Contact me, because guess what I'm going to start doing? Will parties. I'm going to get everybody together. Y'all give me a little $100, and I'm going to do wills on the spot. That way you don't have time to go back and sit on it and wait 6 months, wait a year. We're going to get them done right there on the spot, okay? So contact me. Comment below if you want me to come and do a will party for your family. We're going to get these done, because we are going to change the trajectory of grief and loss in our community. We're going to stop compounding it by not knowing what people want when they pass. I love y'all. I love y'all. I wish you the best. And let's do this.